everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, we are going to be talking about bratting. I know I am a little late to the party in this one since brat summer is now entirely over, but in my defense, what is more true to brat form than doing things at the time I want to do them and not when I'm supposed to be doing them? We have actually talked about brats a number of times on this channel before. Being a brat versus being a damsel in distress, how to be a brat tamer, and even what being a dominant brat can look like. But it has been years and years since I have covered the very basics of bratting, and I think it's high time we finally revisited that. So let's talk about it. First of all, as usual, I do like to start out with a definition. So in the simplest possible terms, a brat is usually, but not always, a bottom or submissive who enjoys acting out, breaking the rules on purpose, or otherwise intentionally getting a rise out of their partner. To be frank, this is often stereotyped as a thing younger female submissives do, but anyone of any gender, age, or experience level can be a brat. And while bratting is also often thought of as an all-the-time thing, like someone is either totally a brat or they are not one at all, it doesn't have to be that way either. Some people do have being a brat as their primary kink identity, the way other people identify with being a pet or a little. For other people, they only feel it comes out with specific partners, or they only choose to engage with their brat persona on rare occasions. You can have whatever relationship to bratting you want to. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. And for some people, bratting immediately clicks. It makes sense. Ooh, you mean I get to play around with the rules and poke fun? Heck yes, that's totally my thing. But for other people, it doesn't make much sense at all. What do you mean you can call yourself a submissive, but you break the rules on purpose and you like it? What do you mean you talk back or roll your eyes? What is the point of even being a sub if you are going to be disrespectful and not obey your dom instantly? Many arguments about bratting have started over the years thanks to trains of thought like this. And, hey, bratting is not going to be for everyone. If this does not resonate with you at all, that's totally fine. But that doesn't mean the people who like bratting are wrong or bad. For the people who strictly think all subs and bottoms have to be meek and obedient, I have a very simple explanation for the allure of bratting. You know how many people are into BDSM, are into it because it's taboo, because it goes against the grain? It's naughty, it's wrong, according to the vanilla world, at least most of the time. Well, the same allure of the taboo also happens within the kink community. Being a brat is playing with those very expectations of compliance and demureness because it's taboo within the community to not be those things and also be an S-type. Brats are basically doing taboo section in a way. So I don't think it's fair to fault brats for doing the same thing millions of other kinksters do, just from a different direction. But this is not the only reason why people brat. Just like being into the taboo isn't the only reason why people are into kink. For many people, the taboo is not even on their radar for why they're into kink. Many people like to brat because it gives them an appropriate container for their fantasies, especially with masochism. Bratting pairs well with the naughty schoolgirl fantasy, or corporal punishment, or caregiver little, or DDLG, and, of course, heavy masochism. For many people, it is hard, both physically and psychologically, to say they want to be in pain. So they have to come up with a reason to justify it. They just had to be punished. They deserved it. The pain, therefore, has a reason. It becomes the consequence of their actions, letting them get their needs met without having to admit to themselves directly that the pain was what they really wanted in the first place. And even for people who have done the work to become comfortable with their desires, it can still be fun to play at it, like you're getting what's coming to you. And for some people, that's yet another motivation, the desire to be who they fully are without being rejected. This is especially true for what I would call natural brats, or people who always have some element of bratting in their kink and in their larger personality. Some people just like to tease, like to poke at others, and they are generally a little bit on the naughty side. For most folks, this is not something that they can safely express in a vanilla relationship, especially without clear boundaries. They may have been told in the past that they were too much effort, they were annoying or rude or immature, even when they were just being true to who they are and how they express affection in their relationships. A kink relationship gives them the structure necessary to be their authentic selves and not only have it be tolerated, but loved and rewarded too. And, can't we all relate to that desire? Don't we all want to have people in our lives who see us for who we are truly and don't reject us out of hand for our quirks? Brats deserve to have that as well, even if they might do kink in a way that looks very different from how we would do it. You may have noticed in there, though, in those statements, that I specifically referenced boundaries and structure. And this is where bratting gets tricky. A lot of people will just hear, ooh, I can make fun of my partner and tease them, and that's okay, and they have to accept it because I'm being true to who I am, and they are off to the races without so much as a check-in. Don't do that, please. This is the kind of behavior that gets brats a bad reputation in the scene. A lot of people, fairly or unfairly, really do not like brats, either because of experiences they have had or experiences they have heard others having, where it seems like bratting is used as a get-out-of-jail-free card for submissives who want to not listen and get away with it. People who want to pretend to be submissive, but don't actually have a subby bone in their bodies. Some even go so far as to openly brat to strangers in public or at parties, hoping to get attention by any means necessary, so it's not really a wonder why brats aren't everyone's favorites. And I will not deny that this happens sometimes. I am disappointed whenever I hear about it. And I myself have seen some uncomfortable interactions supposed brats have had with their supposed doms that make me question whether or not the brat actually cares about their partner's consent or their emotional well-being. But we should be careful not to make broad statements about all brats everywhere when what we're really talking about is specific bad actors. With the right education, brats can be just as ethical and thoughtful as any other kinkster. They just need some direction first. So, let's say you're a brat or a wannabe brat. How can you tell your partner you want to try bratting? Pop quiz! Do you A, suddenly play a prank on them out of nowhere, like swapping their toothpaste for mayonnaise? B, start calling them verbal insults in an attempt to get them to spank you as a punishment? Or C, talk about your desires and set up some limits? The correct answer is C, of course. All ethical bratting should be done with explicit consent and clear guidelines. That includes not only the limits of the S-type, but the limits of the D-type as well. We often forget about this in other forms of BDSM, but doms and tops can have limits too. If your D-type partner tells you, hey, please don't call me names, you have to respect that. I recommend having a conversation where you discuss when and where bratting is okay, what kind of bratting is acceptable, and how you will communicate if any unexpected limits are crossed. Discussing any goals or desires is good too. If you're bratting because you want to be put in a corner and humiliated, but your partner assumes that what you're looking for is an over-the-knee spanking and being told you're a bad girl, neither one of you is going to really end up getting what you wanted. And speaking of that, even though a lot of brats are masochists, they are not all masochists. And not all of them are physical masochists either. Some are into this purely for power exchange reasons and like being put in place by their dominant partner. They like knowing that they aren't the one in control. And if they do push things too far, their partner is not only able to, but cares enough to remind them of their role in the relationship. Others are emotional masochists who aren't looking for physical pain, but maybe looking for humiliation or verbal degradation, or they may want to be objectified. A lot of non-consensual bratting interactions are sourced from this, where a person tries to intentionally make someone mad or upset to be made fun of, embarrassed, or threatened in return. But the point is, Don't assume what kind of brat you're dealing with. Ask questions and figure out exactly what they want and why they do what they do. Not all brats initially will know what that looks like for them, but you should have some kind of place to work out what it is, because if you don't know it all and no one in the relationship knows, how are you going to have a successful bratting dynamic? Especially if you have a power exchange relationship you want to add bratting to, it is vital to be clear about which rules are okay to mess with and which ones aren't. Being able to mess with all of the rules a little bit can be okay. Still, it is more likely to slowly erode your relationship over time if you are not coming into it with a lot of experience and total confidence in your communication abilities. People tend to either follow the philosophy that the rules of the power exchange relationship are off limits for bratting altogether, or they give very specific guidelines about which are okay to muck about with. For example, you might not mind too much if your partner finds a way to brat about the rule that says they must take a picture of their lunch every day, but you might be very upset if they decide to brat about the rule that says you will be honest with each other. Many couples therefore draw a bold line between core rules and bratable rules. The core rules are never to be messed with under any circumstances and usually involve mental and physical well-being, honesty, and trust. On the other hand, the bratable rules tend to be the ones that are there more for flavor. Having a bedtime, reporting water intake, keeping a journal, things like that. If you want to add bratting to a power exchange relationship, I always recommend giving your partner permission to brat about one or two things at first, keeping it super narrow, and then expanding from there if it goes well, and then reeling it back in if it doesn't. And hey, what if it does go well? What do you do after your partner brats at you if you're dominant and you have one? Well, you have to correct them, of course. What's that? The correction isn't working? They just keep bratting more and more and more and they're running the whole household? Well, in that case, you ought to know about the difference between punishments and funishments. A punishment in a BDSM context is an act performed to deter an unwanted behavior and reduce the chance it will occur in the future. This is most commonly used in a power exchange relationship where breaking a rule may lead to a punishment, so a submissive will not willingly break it again. A punishment is a play punishment. Often a punishment is used as part of a role-play narrative where no rule has actually really been broken, but the participants want to act as though one has. A punishment or a fun punishment can also be used whenever you want to play with the aesthetics of a punishment, but don't actually want to or need to correct any underlying behavior. Both have their place. The problem is when you don't know the difference or try to do one when you mean to be doing the other. Some of this can be rectified if you are clear up front about the motivations for what you're doing. Are you doing a punishment for real? Or is this just a roleplay thing for fun? But the big issue is, if you do have a brat in your hands who is also a masochist, you may need to work harder to find effective punishments for them. A swat on the butt is just going to make them do it more for a lot of them. So you need to find that sweet spot between things they don't like and things they still consent to. Often this can involve acts of physical labor, acts of service, or acts of contrition, like writing an apology letter or being made to grovel and beg for forgiveness while slobbering on some boots. I have other videos where I've talked about non-physical punishment ideas extensively if you want more concepts for that. And then when it comes to punishment, you can do almost anything you want to, assuming you are okay with reinforcing whatever behavior led to the punishment, if any. Remember, we teach people how to treat us. For this reason, I don't recommend playing with punishment if it starts from a place of someone bratting without your consent or outside of whatever scope you agreed to. Both punishments and punishments can work really well for brats and for non-brats too, but you just really have to know what you're working with in order to be able to make them effective. I also want to talk about safe words in bratting. I have known brats in my day who take a lot of pleasure out of playing with safe words, and by that I mean they are not just saying no when they don't really mean no. They might also say red or safe word or whatever their safe word is when they don't actually really mean it because they're playing with this safe word the same way that they would play with a no. I have seen this across the board in many scenarios. And if that is you and you are drawn to that, I really recommend not doing that, especially in a public setting. You might be able to come up with a way to do it in private where you both agree, red doesn't mean stop, but purple means what red normally means. Like, you could come up with a different alternative system for a safe word that works privately, but at a public dungeon, at least at most of them, safe word or red is going to be taken as a universal safe word. And if you say it around a group of people, or if you say it in a public dungeon, at the very least, people are going to raise eyebrows and be concerned, and you could have people who try to step in and stop your scene, or even get into an altercation with the dominant partner if they think the dominant isn't listening to a real safe word when they should be. And that is something that you should hopefully want to avoid. So just be careful with playing around with safe words. I find a lot of brats in particular like really messing with them, but they're in place for a reason. Find alternative ways to get that urge out if you have that urge, or just be really careful about when and where you're doing it. Now, finally, I want to talk about what to do if you have a bratting partner that is simply not listening to your boundaries and not respecting your consent. And this sadly can be a really prominent issue because not very many DOMs are taught how to deal with this, because it's sort of assumed that it won't happen. If you're the D-type, if you're the Dom, you're the one in power, just order them not to do it. You're the sadist, they're a masochist. You're the one holding the flogger. What do you mean they're hurting you? And that really does not respect the fact that toxic dynamics can happen in many different ways. And it can not only be physical, it can also be emotional, it can be mental. And especially because so many BDSM relationships are not only BDSM relationships, but also romantic in nature, people can hurt each other regardless of what their role is. It does not matter if you're a dom or a top or a sadist or anything. You can still be hurt by your partners, and you need to know how to make sure that your consent is respected and what to do if that is not happening for you. So number one, the first technique, if you are just dealing with like, oh, it doesn't really seem like they're really taking me seriously when I'm saying something, how can I get them to really understand that this is a boundary? The first step that you need to do is to be very clear, very firm, be a broken record on what your boundaries are. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't try to be nice. Don't be mean about it either. Like, don't make the problem worse by, giving it back to them, but be firm, be clear, and be direct. Do not beat around the bush. Say very clearly, hey, stop that. You are not allowed to treat me that way. You are not allowed to talk to me that way. If you do or say that again, this is what the consequence is going to be. And then stick to that consequence. If that means no contact, if that means you're going to break up, if that means that you will not go to dungeons with them anymore, whatever the thing that you are going to do as a consequence, make sure they know what that is and then follow through on it, because then they will take it very seriously. Hopefully they should wake up to that. If they are an ethical person, they're just like maybe not fully understanding how two-way consent in BDSM works, they might then go, oh, I didn't realize, like, I had no idea, I'm really sorry. And then they can behave differently after that, once it's been made crystal clear what the stakes are and exactly what they are doing wrong. And then just repeat that, stick to it, don't compromise. If something happens again, you have to follow through on whatever you say you're going to do as a result of that. And that could be no longer being in a DS relationship. That could be those other things that I talked about, but stick to whatever it is. And hopefully for most people, that will simply cause them to realize, oh, boundaries go both ways and I need to get my act together. But there are going to be people that even when you are really, really firm with your boundaries and say, hey, this is not okay. Do not do this. You are not allowed to treat me this way. They will find a way around that. They will poke at you a different way. They will find a way to do it anyways. They will try to dig their heels in, and they still refuse to change their behavior because, well, but I'm a brat, but it's not a big deal, but whatever thing they have in their head that tells them, well, but it should be fine because, it's not that big of a deal, or I'm not trying to hurt you, or just take a joke, don't take it personally. All those things that people will say to try to get you to be okay with something that you know is actually hurting you. It's a sadly common occurrence in relationships. And honestly, really, my advice is to walk away from the relationship. If this person has demonstrated time and time again a lack of respect for you, a lack of willingness to listen to your boundaries, and they're belittling what your boundaries are, and then when you're even giving them every chance to really listen to you and really understand the gravity of the scenario, they still are not respecting that, at some point you have to choose to walk away. And you can say why. You can say, all right, if you really feel that way, we are not compatible in a relationship, and whatever your protocol is for that breakup, if you're in a DS relationship, what that means, if you're just dating, what that means, if you're just play partners, what does that mean? But you have to execute on it. And I really would encourage people as dominants to not take it if somebody is disrespecting their boundaries, because your consent matters, your emotional and mental well-being matters, and even though you're just a dominant, your partner is still capable of hurting you and causing damage to not only you, but the relationship itself. And don't stick in a relationship because, as the dominant, you should be able to make them obey. Or, that'll happen too. You'll get brats who are, in my mind, not even really brats because they're doing it non-consensually and doing it in a non-ethical way. You will get people who will say, well, but I would listen to you if you would just, hit me more, or if you would, man up or be more dominant. If you hear that, no, I'm gonna put a flag on the play. Do not continue. To me, that's a really big red flag. I don't think that person has the kind of mentality that I would assume goes with a fully consensual, mutually pleasurable DS relationship. And yeah, if anyone is trying to pass off their behavior as being okay because it's not a big deal, or because, well, actually, it's your fault I'm behaving this way because you're simply not manly enough, or not dominant enough, or not authoritative enough. Okay, I guess I'm not for you then. Guess we shouldn't be in this relationship. And I don't mean to say that nonchalantly, like it's easy to break up with someone when you're not compatible, but I don't want people to feel like they should be stuck in a relationship that doesn't make them happy because they don't know that as a dominant that they're supposed to also have their boundaries be respected. And they, the way to move through that is just to well, if I'm just more dominant, I can make them respect me. No, they should act like a play partner who cares about you, a sub who cares about you, will care about you. They don't have to be made to care about you. They just will. That should be a fundamental part of the relationship. But that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you all so much for listening. I would love to hear your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. If you are a brat or you have a brat you're in a relationship with, I would love to hear your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. What do you do that works for you? Any tips you want to add? Anything that maybe I didn't cover? Feel free to comment it down below. If you did enjoy this and already, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all different BDSM activities. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.